Who are some guys, maybe a name or two on offense, a name or two on defense, that you think could be poised for pretty big seasons this year for the Browns?
Well, defensively, I mean, it's kind of crazy because you're talking about a guy who just signed a contract extension, but I think that like with JOK, with Jeremiah, and this is not rocket science I'm performing here, but there's a level to him getting even better. And it seems as though the Browns, if you pay attention closely to this, would be really like sicko mode stuff if you were paying this close of attention. But this is stuff I love. You listen to Jim Schwartz talk about him and Jason Tarver, the linebackers coach. It's abundantly obvious that they think there's another level for the young man, and we think he's among the best seven-ish linebackers now being paid accordingly at the position in the NFL. But then you would agree with me that there's a tier of like the Fred Warners and the Roquan Smiths, and if he can figure out a way to get to that level of playmaking, responsibility, all of that stuff, it's just sort of sitting there for him. It's still the age of 24, doesn't even turn 25 until I think early November. It's a special situation, and he's a special player. So they really did a great job of putting him in more of a weapon role last year, letting him kind of walk up on the edge of the line of scrimmage, letting him play traditional Mike or Will linebacker in the tackle box, the traditional way you would view it. But then they let him creep into the line of scrimmage and create havoc. He is just such a unique part of the roster, and he really makes the defense. I would kind of phrase it like level up. They're just a more dangerous group with him on the field. And then you kind of push into the fact that he is uniquely talented, faster than most people on the field, and can do things with anticipation. Him getting to the next tier is certainly feasible for me. On another scale, I think you're kind of looking at who can make an impact maybe on the defensive line you didn't expect. I think the name that I kind of go back to and what they need. This is more of a need and less a prediction, but I think he came on so strongly at the end of last year. Alex Wright, kind of working that fourth defensive end role because he's going to be behind Zadarius, and then Owusu-Koramoah is going to kind of work his way in there too. Really believe Myles Garrett when he needs a break, all of that stuff. But if they can get Alex Wright, as we talk about the Browns have pushed now 13 guys on the roster to 10 plus million second contract players. It's a little crazy to think of Alex Wright as a second contract 10 plus million. We're not there yet. But the theory here is like you draft this type of player in the middle rounds, really good projectable body type, starting to put together by virtue of exposure to the talent around him at that edge position, a really great pass rushing repertoire. You can see how he can develop into something special. And really, they don't even need him to be special. I would say that they need him to just be a really solid player that can start opposite Miles, anchor the run game, and provide some secondary pass rush. Because no one's going to get home to the quarterback as quick as Miles. But when you get a lot of one-on-one matchups, being able to take advantage of those and produce sacks is something that is imperative for the edge opposite of Miles and what we think is a pretty good group up front. I would have said Mike Call. We got to see what shakes out with that situation because as far as on-field traits go, he's special. Like he can move in a way other defensive tackles cannot. But again, there's a lot to sort out and work through and what the future looks like there, which is a little wild to think of. What they just drafted a guy in the second round, but I think if you're looking for outside of that realm, Alex Wright is a guy that I think could get an increased snap share and again started at the end of the year last year where he produced multiple sacks, some really positive traits that were starting to show up. Like they guys in the second, third year, they just start to get it. How do I win consistently? What parts of my game are better than others? And you start to formulate a plan that is pretty applicable, right? Offensively, it's a little harder because some of these guys are very honed in on position. I would expect Jerome Ford to be better. The pace at which we get Nick Chubb back into the fold is tough to tell. It's a guessing game for anybody to go about it. And you obviously want to hint to the side of optimism about he'll be back earlier. But Jerome kind of going into a season knowing he's going to be a lead back, he's going to get a lot of opportunity. He's been very honed in on specific parts of the position that he needs to get better about. Pass protection is something he and Deuce Staley and Kevin Stefanski specifically mentioned. If the pass protection stuff can get better, he's a three down back. He can catch the football out of the backfield. We saw him make plays in the route concept stuff. I do think there's a level to his ability to create yards that are maybe not provided through scheme. What they call that yards over expectation, which is something that we get spoiled watching Nick Chubb do consistently was create something out of nothing. You can really get spoiled about what that ultimately looks like. But I think Jerome having a year under his belt, a lot of exposure to what Kevin likes, and then sort of just like a little bit of a body change you can tell he's gone through. He's getting himself ready to be more durable. I'm excited to see what he can do in his second year. And in the pass catching world, I think most of the positions are pretty honed in. the hope, and this is not necessarily, again, kind of the way I'm talking about Alex Wright, it's less a prediction and more like they need this young man to figure it out. And that's Cedric Tillman. I mean, a lot of buzz, and what I saw at training camp too was really promising stuff. I think he's a talented player, but the nuanced stuff of the position that makes wide receivers good to like kind of average to good is where he has to sort of start figuring more things out. There are times with him that he doesn't understand the little things about blocking, the correct angle, the correct side to put your head on to cut off a guy, maybe on a what's called a toss crack scheme where he's supposed to crack down on the defensive end or outside linebacker to seal that edge for a couple seconds so the running back can get around. He takes a poor angle, doesn't quite get there. If it's an option route, should he break in? Should he break out? Should he push vertical? Kind of all of those things we saw last year against the Jaguars, a miscommunication between him and Joe Flacco where he didn't read the coverage. Kevin was pretty upset with him. I think some of those things have popped up. And then if you're watching the preseason game, the mesh route where he runs into the DB and makes it kind of abundantly obvious that it was you call mesh because you get an organic pick play in man coverage. You can't make it obvious though that you're trying to shield off somebody else's guy chasing him, and he did that. So like the little things about the position, he has to get better at the thinking it through things because the physical part of the position, running, hitting the route depth, being where he's supposed to be, hauling in the football and chaos situations or in the open field, he can do all those things. It's on his tape, but his offense in Tennessee back when he was playing there was pretty limited in terms of what they were asking wide receivers to do. So the nuances of the position have been something that have been a little more of a challenge for him to figure out on the fly. But if he can get those, Dave, I think there's a chance he could have a really, strong maybe back half of this year and then third and fourth years of his rookie deal. So it noticed to me that they're trying to work him in more because they understand future contract situations between Amari, Elijah. They would really like to solve that internally to an extent with at least a player who they can trust to play. And then Jerry Jeudy can kind of work his way into maybe a bigger role in the following season. But, Tillman's had a nice select few moments at camp. There's reasons for optimism there. But if he can figure out those little things, I think that's the stuff that can separate him from being average to more of a quality contributor at the NFL level.